Life. A constant ebb and flow of good and bad experiences. We spend hours scrolling, watching perfect highlight reels of people's lives. I've been a storyteller for 9 years. I have yet to meet a person who hasn't had a dark shadow cast over their soul from staring death or trauma in the face, myself included. In sharing my experiences, I've gained tools for days when those shadows get a little too dark. I'm Paulina Bucka, and this is not your typical mental health podcast. We all have a story. It's time to start using yours for your revival. I've had a side hustle my entire news career. I met Dr. Nuzzo when a friend of mine asked me to do some video work for her. You were getting a bill passed here in Nevada for naprapathic medicine, and I did the video for the bill signing with the governor there. We didn't know then, but that moment was the beginning of our work together. As I left news and started my own production company, I reached out to Dr. Nuzzo to see if he needed some help. Turns out, he's been growing his New Mexico School of Naprapathy and bringing it to Las Vegas. Until this moment, I'll be honest, I'd never heard of naprapathy. I feel like when I did the video a year ago, I was like, oh, Dr. Nuzzo's just a really nice man. And then now that I've taken you on as a client and I've really started to look into naprapathic medicine, my world has changed because I've taken a few treatments with you. As someone who is always looking for natural remedies and alternatives to pharmaceutical drugs, naprapathy has really changed the way I view myself, the stress my body stores, and the ways in which we can all heal our bodies. Please help me welcome Dr. Patrick Nuzzo, co-founder of Southwest University of Naprapathic Medicine. So I think it's a very neat practice. It's not a practice that many people have heard of. So I think first and foremost, for anybody listening, what is naprapathic medicine?
Naprapathic medicine started right alongside chiropractic medicine back in the early 1900s. Actually, Oakley Smith, who founded naprapathic medicine, was a protege of D.D. Palmer, who started chiropractic medicine. And this was back in the early 1900s in Davenport, Iowa. And that's really where manual medicine started in the United States. Actually, Dr. Andrew Still was also in Davenport, Iowa at that time. And Dr. Still started osteopathic medicine. So the manual medicine movement was born out of Davenport, Iowa, the cornfields of Davenport, Iowa. And D.D. Palmer was running his school and brought Oakley Smith in. Oakley Smith at the time was a medical pathologist at the University of Iowa. And he was doing dissections. He was a young, sickly man, Oakley Smith. He was tall, had rheumatic fever when he was younger, and suffered some paralysis and some dysfunction of his musculoskeletal systems. And Oakley Smith's parents had money. They came from means. So they waltzed Oakley Smith really all over the country, all over the world for different types of treatments for his rheumatic fever and his scarlet fever. And somehow Oakley and D.D. Palmer got put together, and Oakley Smith was a scientist and died as a scientist. And D.D. Palmer brought Oakley Smith in to prove the subluxation theory of chiropractic medicine. Okay, and that was really the whole premise that what chiropractic medicine was built on. Well, Oakley Smith actually came in and disproved the subluxation theory of chiropractic medicine. You know, the alignment of the bony structure is very, very, very important. And the alignment of the bony structure, especially the vertebrae, where each vertebrae has a nerve exit and goes to different parts of the body, has to be aligned in order for those nerves to be unimpeded. And they team up with lymph and blood, and they bring nutrients and blood and lymph too, and they bring blood and waste away. So it's a circulatory system. And that's the way the body works. It brings nerve signals, right? Well, Oakley Smith believed that you can't just adjust the bony structure back into alignment. Chiropractors tend to do high velocity adjustments on the vertebral column. Well, Oakley Smith designed something called chartology and chardosis, where you take the findings on the spinous processes, on the transverse processes. And based on those findings, you then design a treatment to bring bony structure into alignment without high velocity force. So naprapaths are connective tissue specialists. We treat the connective tissue that either holds that bony structure into alignment or pulls it out of alignment. Ligaments hold bone to bone, tendons hold muscle to bone, but the most prevalent connective tissue is called fascia, or interstitial tissue. And fascia runs between every layer of muscle, covers every bone, covers every organ. It should be viscous and gooey in nature. So when you're moving your head or you're moving your shoulder, those muscles should glide over that viscous gooey fascia. stress, dehydration, repetitive motion, trauma, all tend to dry that fascia out because that fascia, if it's repetitive motion over and over and over again, or if it's a trauma from something coming at you, the body will hold. And when the body holds, it starts to diminish circulation. And when circulation is diminished, that connective tissue, muscles, fascia dry out. And when they dry out, it acts like glue, and they glue layer to layer of muscle together or layer to layer of connective tissue together. So when you move, it's not gliding, it's acting like a fulcrum, and it's pulling bony structure out of alignment. So a chiropractor would find those malalignments, which they're in everybody, and you go and you adjust those malalignments to bring, alignment there so the nerve lymph blood flows correctly. But you can't just adjust the bony structure without treating the tissue that's pulling that bony structure out of alignment. So naprapaths are connective tissue specialists. We're non-surgical, orthopedic connective tissue specialists who believe in anti-inflammatory medicine, and that's how we work. We increase circulation, we decrease inflammation. Naprapathic medicine is a very, very small profession. I mean, the bad news is, it's almost 120 years old. The profession started in 1906. Only licensed in 3 states. Illinois was the first state, and Illinois is where I graduated from school, and I graduated 40 years ago. And I came to New Mexico about 20 years ago, not really wanting to, open a state and do practice. I actually came to New Mexico to do a retreat center because my practice in Illinois was treating adult survivors of childhood trauma.
When I hear naprapathic medicine, when we first, like I said, got together and started working together, I understood naprapathic medicine to just, like I said, be something similar to chiropractic. And in my head, I could never understand how trauma, how you could pull trauma out of the body. And so it wasn't until I started reading your book, actually on the plane to Kalispell, Montana, and I was able to read the whole book. And I was like, wow, there is so much that the body holds, first of all, and that I knew from reading in the past anyways. The body holds the score. And but it was interesting to me what naprapathic medicine could do for people and survivors of trauma. So I think let's take you back a little bit about what you were doing in Chicago, because you said you worked with trauma survivors.
My daughter's mother, really, really talented, beautiful young woman, always had a difficulty breathing. She was a singer, she was a performer, and always would have a difficult getting breath down to her belly, getting breath into her lungs. Sometimes would wake up in the middle of the night gagging and just having these really unusual effects. Okay. And her and I dated for a couple of years. I was living in California, she was living in Chicago, and I was doing one of those long distance relationships. Well, we wound up getting pregnant, and she moved to California with me. And as she was getting going along in the pregnancy, she had lots of complications because she was having a hard time digesting food. She was having a hard time, she'd have terrors and night sweats and, just all these symptoms. And it was like, we had no idea what was going on. Well, lo and behold, time came for her to deliver. Okay. And this poor woman went through 36 hours of labor. And during these 36 hours of labor came back many of her childhood trauma memories. Okay. And I think it was the birthing process that opened her up, right? Because you're breathing so much and that canal is opening up, the belly is opening up. Well, she, relived memories during that labor that, made her understand that she was sexually abused as a child and continually. And when she opened up from that, the next several years, her life unraveled into this, horror of her childhood. At the time, I had my naprapathic practice back in Illinois. I was really working on athletes. I had a sports practice. I mean, I had a business where I was making sports supplements. I actually coined the term sports nutrition back in the 80s with a product line. I went into business with Walter Payton, who was a Hall of Fame running back for the Chicago Bears. So my practice was in sports and treating athletes and, doing sports nutrition for athletes. And then all of a sudden, I had this child and a mother who was going through the ravages of her childhood memories of sexual abuse, trying to deal with a infant child and living a life. So my life was thrust into this arena. My practice shifted from sports to shifted to treating adult survivors of childhood trauma. The people would come from therapists to me because if people were coming to me for work because they were experiencing body pain or experiencing difficulties breathing or digestive problems, and they had trauma in their body and they knew they held it there, I would make sure that those people were in therapy if they were coming to get body work, because I'm not a therapist, I'm a body work. But the body holds on to the trauma. And I'll give you a really simple explanation of how that works, okay? And I did this to all my patients that walked in my office, okay? It's like, I would always interview them first. I would make sure that they knew that, what they were getting into, what they were going to try and, access in their body. And I would tell them, if you walk into my office and, I throw something at you when you walk in, your reaction is going to be to protect yourself, right? And next week I scheduled an appointment for you and you walked in my office and I threw it at you again, you're going to have that same reaction. Well, if you come back the next week, you're already thinking before you get there that, my body's protecting myself because this guy's coming after me. Well, when trauma comes after the body and you're a younger child, you get yourself into body armoring. Wilhelm Reich talked all about body armoring. Wilhelm Reich was one of Freud's, students and really talked about how the body armors itself up against physical, verbal, emotional, sexual abuse. When the body armors, okay, and the body closes down, that fascia, that musculature, those ligaments all get pulled and torqued into that position. And the fibers pull on the bony structure and pull that bony structure out of alignment, which creates a lack of circulation, um, a lack of nerve, lymph, blood circulation. And when that happens, inflammation starts. And when inflammation starts, pain starts. So people are walking around with this trauma that has come at them, holding these body patterns that, just impede normal blood, lymph, nerve flow. And when that happens, inflammation and pain starts. So trauma absolutely impacts the body. Okay. I've got another one of the most profound stories. I mean, I've seen a lot of people as I'm working on them go into catharsis. You hit spots in their body where they're going to, they're going to cry and they're going to, feel pains and, smell things. I mean, the body is in a marvelous instrument. One afternoon, I mean, this is the most profound thing I've ever done in my office. I was treating a Iraq war veteran because he had PTSD. This poor guy had pain in his arm and shoulder for years. They gave him medications, got him hooked on opioids. His life was really destroyed. Him through his mother, who was a patient of mine, and she asked if I would, please see her son and please work on him. And she told me his situation. He was pretty down and out, and absolutely took the guy in and worked on him. And he was just locked up, fear. I mean, the guy was just clenching his teeth. You could see in his eyes he was just, barely there, right? So he did let me work on him, and I worked on him once a week and I think it was the fourth treatment that I worked on him. Okay, his pain was all in his neck and shoulders on his right side, and I'm working on him, working in the shoulder, and all of a sudden he just boom hit this catharsis, started shaking, shivering. The entire room smelled like gunpowder. The entire room smelled like gunpowder. And he was sobbing and he got up off the table and he relived the memory of the truck in front of him hit the IED and blew up, and he went like this to protect himself, and he caught all that trauma was just in his body because of what he saw and what he experienced, and he was liberated from a lot of that pain just by that instance, connecting to that point, and it relives, and you have to feel it to heal it. You got to be able to get
Mhm.
into those tissues and feel what's going on, but you got to have support and strength around you to kind of understand what's going on too.
I don't think I realized until I was doing EMDR treatments in Louisiana how much of the pain and I guess how much pain lives in the
Yeah,
body in general. And I think that was the first time that my therapist really started to, explain like why certain parts of my body hurt more than others. And then again, like as I started reading more and more as I got older and just continued down this rabbit hole, you just learn the different ways that your body responds to the things that you've been through. And Dr. Nuzzo, again, like when we started working together, I've known all of this. And even then, when we started working, I was like, when you don't know, right? You kind of what you don't know? I don't know, kind of thing. And so I think when I was like, okay, you said, let's do a treatment. I said, okay, I don't really know what's going to happen here. It was just pressing down on certain, right? Like it's a massage of sorts. Like how would you explain what you do?
it's soft and connective tissue manipulation. Naprapaths are trained to seek and find tension in the body, okay? And find that tension and bring it back to the articulation or the bony structure where it begins. So many times, it lies in musculature, ties into fascia, fascia ties into tendons tie into the ligaments, and it's a pull on that whole connective tissue structure of the body. If we didn't have connective tissues in our body, we would just jump into a puddle, right? I mean, the connective tissue is what holds all of articulations together. So naprapaths are connective tissue specialists taught to specifically identify where tension is and to normalize that tension by applying, naprapathic treatment. So it's not massage, it's really very, I mean, not
That's as best as
massage.
I could explain
Yeah.
it to everyone.
Thing that massage and naprapathic treatments have in common is we touch the body, right? But we are specifically looking for the cause of that tension, where that tension starts, and that wherever that tension starts has tentacles to the body that go back into that. So we're finding where those tentacles of tension are and tracing them back to the bony structure, and particularly the vertebral column, to realign that bony structure so you get unimpeded flow.
Dr. Nuzzo, you have worked with trauma victims of all kinds of trauma victims, right? Where do most people who have been through trauma hold their trauma in their body? Is there a specific point? Or is it just kind of based on what they've been through?
If they're sexually abused, I mean, this is generalization, okay? A lot of times when they're sexually abused, that abuse is held in the abdominal region. It's just because of the exposure, and I mean it's just there, and it's such a delicate, all your organs are there. The abdominal region is where most of the trauma that I've worked with has been found, or I've found it. And I'm taking tension findings when I work on the abdomen. The abdomen is loaded with all the organs, all the ligaments that hold those organs in alignment, and it affects digestion, it affects elimination, it affects respiration. People who have anxiety, where do they feel their anxiety? In the solar plexus, is in the chest, in the belly, right?
Mhm.
So it's a very, very, very vulnerable spot. So really have to work to nurture that spot with people, get them to breathe into that spot, get them to understand that there's something going on there. And, they've got to get back in touch with that. Like you got to feel it to heal it. You don't have to remember what happened. You have to recapture and take over those parts of your body that you shut down to keep yourself safe when you were vulnerable. Whether it's a child, whether it's an adolescent, whether it's an adult, we have the innate capability of protecting ourselves, just like we have the innate capability of staying healthy with our immune system. The body's a marvelous instrument, and people who come in traumatized, they come in living in a box. they've been able to put themselves and their feelings in a box well enough to function. They've adapted, right? But there comes a point in their life where that box becomes, rigid, where they have to grow, or they want to grow out of it, and they've got to be able to get back in that box and get the circulation, get the old stuff out so you could fill it with new stuff. So it's a rejuvenative, regenerative process. You've got to be able to take the body back, and it's just a wonderful, I mean, what a journey for people. I've seen people, and honestly, I've seen people, never come out of it too, unfortunately. I mean, the drugs or the alcohol or the whatever else they use to pull it down, they never are able to get out of it. I mean, I'm sad to say that my daughter's mother, basically drank herself to death. She could never get to the place where she was able to, come past the horrendous trauma that was perpetrated against her as a child, and it's, and there's lots of people who, have ruined their lives, or their lives have been ruined, because they've used drugs and alcohol and surgeries and all kinds of different things to cover up that pain, and sometimes people can't overcome it, sometimes they just don't have the strength or the will to overcome it. So it's a tragedy.
It is a tragedy. And life throws these
Yeah.
tragedies at us, and it's, we don't have a say over what happens to us, but we do have a say over how we can heal and how we can
Yep.
fix ourselves. And so for me, it's been a lot of, especially now, I guess, being out of news, I've taken this really new interest in my life and in myself and my own body, and really trying to listen to what my body is saying to me. Because for so long, I mean, I'd have a mental health podcast and telling people to listen to their bodies, and I'm not listening to my own body, Dr. Nuzzo, right? I mean, you just gave me a treatment last week or earlier this week, and I'm like, I'm fine. I'm not. There are moments that are not okay. But you have to keep moving
Yeah.
through them, and just really finding new ways to get better. And for me, it's always a search to, I know that there, I can get back to better. And so better, what does better look
Yeah.
like? And for naprapathic medicine, to me, I don't know, I guess I always teeter the line of holistic medicine and something that's not necessarily big pharma. I don't like medication. So I'm always looking for ways to heal the body without having to take such extreme
Well, you're
measures.
you're looking to treat the cause, not the symptoms. That's
Yeah.
really what is important. We've got to look at the cause. Medicine has forgotten about that. All they do is treat symptoms, right? And treating symptoms are, you're never going to get to the place of opening that box. You're just going to keep covering it up and covering, whether it's alcohol or, non-prescription drugs, recreational drugs, pharmaceutical drugs are the same thing. People have been drugged, and drugged, and antidepressants and anti-anxieties and more medications to take care of the anti-anxiety or the anxiety. It's just, you just get in this vicious circle of masking, masking, masking. And some people, God bless, they have to be there. That's where they have to live their lives. Not everybody wants to see what the cause is, but the only way you really can get to health, right, and radiant health and abundant health and vibrant health is, you've got to get to the cause of things, and you've got to rebuild. You've got to be able to take care of the supply, the power plant. You got to make it work, and you can't just keep masking the symptoms. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Sooner or later, that dirt that you're sweeping under your carpet, you're going to trip over, and it's, something's going to break. Something else is going to give. And that's just kind of the way it works.
Dr. Nuzzo, let's talk about one of the things that you had said to me when I started these treatments with you, was that you don't generally treat people who have been through trauma unless they're also going to therapy. And that's one of the big things for me, is that I don't ever want to give people something and be like, oh, this will maybe make your trauma worse, where this doesn't have trauma is so delicate to deal with. People who have been through significant trauma, and that's what I'm talking about, significant trauma here. It's such a delicate balance to really want to heal someone but not make them worse, or kind of by going through those processes, right? And so that's kind of what EMDR, I know many people have been scared because you have to go through the process, you have to go relive this process, but there are tools after on how to, like, bring it back. And that's what you were saying, you don't do naprapathic treatments without doing therapy as
Not for
well.
somebody who's coming for trauma. If somebody's coming because they have neuromusculoskeletal pain, they've fallen, they've, repetitive use, you don't need, obviously you don't need a therapist for that. But if you're coming specifically because you know that you're dealing with your PTSD or your anxiety and you feel it in your body and it's affecting the way you breathe and it's affecting, you have headaches all the time because of it, or you can't digest, or you have nervous stomach because of it all the time, there's something there that you've got to be able to address. And if we're going to work on the body, that will be revealed. It just, that's the way it happens, and that pain will be revealed. And the person who wants to get through it, the individual, the patient, has got to be willing to process it, to integrate it, to bring it back in as part of them. Sometimes, and I've seen it happen. It things come up for people. It happened with my daughter's mother. The more she'd uncover, the more horrific it would get, the harder she'd have coming back from it. She would just like, and this was early on when we were treating too. I mean, I wish I knew now what I knew then what I know now about this. Um, but you've got to be able to handle it. You got to be able to, and you can't put somebody in a place without making them aware that this is a real possibility, and a probability, and the way you've got to come through it. So if they're not willing to do that type of work and look at it, absolutely, I won't, work with them on it.
When we started treatments, I don't realize how much stress my body holds, right? Because I'm just kind of going at all times. And I'm like, I've been through this, I've been through that, I've kind of lived through that. And you just kind of put things in the back of your mind. But all of that sits in your body and it all lives there somewhere, until you've kind of dealt with it, until you're ready to deal with it. When we started treatments, I think when you started doing, what is it? How do you say this? The I say massages. It really feels like a
It's
massage.
kind of
So until you start
manipulating.
like
I'm
hitting
doing,
some of the nerves, manipulating the muscle tissue. That's what it is. You're manipulating muscle tissue. So when you're manipulating it on my back, I feel like there's no. I'm like, okay, I feel tension, but it's not until you get into my stomach generally, and not all places. It's like one spot, and it generally takes the breath
well,
out of
that's where
me.
the max tension is. That's what I'm at. You'll breathe me right to the spot where that constriction lies, right? And that's where you held. And when you have constriction, it usually works like a spiral, right? Tissues, especially ligaments, they spiral like a wash rag, right? And remember, ligaments hold bone to bone. So if they spiral like a wash rag, they shorten, right? So if they're shortening and they hold bone to bone, guess what? They're pulling the bony structure out of alignment, right?
Mm.
Causing that imbalance of nerve, lymph, blood flow. And when you have that trauma that's deep bedded inside the connective tissue, inside the musculature, you cannot adjust that back into alignment. You've got to untie that back into alignment. And I can't do that. The patient has to do that by breathing to it, by opening themselves up to it, by letting me get into that so I can get circulation to an area to let that tension go, right? But that tension is the trauma that sits around it. So again, you can't adjust it. You got to breathe through it. You got to bring life to it. You got to let it live. And by letting it live, the feelings are going to come out. The message is going to come out. It's going to unwind, and that's a healing. It's the healing process. Who's ready for the healing process? That's what people have to ask themselves. And many, many, many people are. They don't just don't, they don't know what they don't know, right? They know that they're ready for it. How do you get there? How do you do this? And again, naprapathic medicine, we come about things two different ways. We come about things manually, right? We bring alignment, we bring circulation, we bring better range of motion, we bring, nerve, lymph, blood flow unimpeded. And then we work metabolically, right? Metabolically, we get the body to start regenerating. We get the body's health level up. We get the body to start functioning again, the immune system working again, the digestive system working again, the respiratory system. And we're getting them working by, giving them treatments, releasing that tension, getting better circulation. But we're also, we don't believe in a diet per se, right? We believe that no matter what you eat, okay, if you're a vegetarian, if you're a vegan, if you're a carnivore, great. Just make sure that that food is the absolute best quality of food that you could find and put in your body, because food really is medicine. If you don't get the nutrients out of the soils that come into those vegetables, that come into those animals that you then eat, you are deficient. The Department of Agriculture in 1938 came out with a report that said our soils are depleted by 84% of the vital nutrients and minerals. Okay, back in 1938, do you think we've done anything to restore those soils? I mean, we are into chemical and commercialized factory farming. And if you live that lifestyle, okay, you are on medicine. You are living a life that will sooner or later, your organ systems are going to break down. Heart disease, diabetes, cancer, they're running rampant, man. I mean, it's just everywhere. Okay. And it doesn't have to be that way. You can live, I mean, of course, there are environmental factors that mess with people and get people sick, but I'm talking about the self-induced, your eating regime, what you do every day. If you put food in your body that's medicine, you will get healthier. If you put food in your body that's poison, you'll stay down that path of, I mean, pesticides, fertilizers, food additives make the food, right? Medications, treat the diseases that those pesticides, fertilizers and food additives bring on. So people are eating their disease or they're eating their health, right? I mean, it's pretty much that way.
It's all
It's all
connected.
connected.
It's always
It's
all
all
connected.
connected.
Dr. Nuzzo, so let's talk about this because you said in Illinois is where you were treating trauma survivors and then you moved to New Mexico. What happened in New
Well,
Mexico? How do we get to New
yeah,
Mexico?
I always tell people, look out the window. Blue skies, mountains. I mean, it's beautiful. I come from Chicago, 92 blue sky days a year, cold, damp. Chicago's a great place to be from. I grew up there. I have family there still. I go back, once a year, take my son back at least once a year, show him where he came from and the people he came from. And, it's a wonderful thing. But what I did was I decided that I wanted to do a retreat center, right? This is when we were treating the
Mhm.
trauma so I started taking a group once a month. I bought a property in the southern part of the state in New Mexico in the Gila National Forest, hot springs, rivers. I mean, it was a paradise. It is a paradise down there. So we bought this retreat center, and once a month we would take patients from my practice and we do a week retreat, and it would be great food, treatments, hot springs, horseback riding. People would come and process. There was lots of therapy because therapists would, I would run the retreat and I'd have two or three therapists there depending on how many people came on that retreat. And we ran those for a few years. And I was going back and forth to my practice in Illinois every other week. My daughter and her mother moved out to the retreat center. My daughter did school out in New Mexico, and I did it for 8 years, every other week, back and forth, back and forth. And one afternoon, I walked into my office in Silver City. It was Lake Roberts, New Mexico, and I got a phone call. And this gentleman got on the phone and said, "Hello, my name is Benny." He said, um, "I broke my neck in a car accident a couple of years ago. I'm in constant pain. I'm taking medication. I've been everywhere. I heard you could help me." So I set up this appointment with Benny. I'm going to tell you the story because this is how we got to the school, okay? Because I
Okay.
never came to New Mexico to do a school. I came to New Mexico to do a retreat center. About 2 weeks later, Benny shows up in my office, a beautiful old New Mexican man, overalls, t-shirt, just a sweet looking guy. Benny was in pain, man. He couldn't move his neck. He had headaches all the time. Told him what we were doing. We hit it off really well. Started treating Benny. I treated Benny twice a week, every other week when I was there. And I started, and it was like August of that year that he called me. It was August of 99. He called me and started doing the treatments, coming in, loved the treatment, starting to feel better. So October comes around, end of October, and Benny walks into my office one afternoon and he looks me in the eye and says, Doc, he says, I'm sleeping through the night. I take about a third of the pain medication I used to take. I get range of motion back. He says, I got my life back. He says, we need to get you licensed here in New Mexico. I thought, what the hell is Benny talking about, right? Well, Benny turned out to be Senator Ben Altamirano. And Senator Ben Altamirano was the president pro tem of the Senate here in New Mexico for 34 years when I met him. So,
Talk about a great
yeah,
client.
so he invited me. He introduced the Naprapathic Practice Act. We introduced it in January of 2020. I never did anything like this. I'm going up to Santa Fe now, and I'm going to be a lobbyist. So it took me 4 years to get the bill passed. Okay. And we got the bill passed. Governor Richardson signed the bill into law. And when I was standing at the desk with Governor Richardson and Benny looks at Richardson and Richardson looks at me and he says, you got to bring a school here to New Mexico. And I thought, all right, I can do that. I was dumb enough to tell him, yeah, I'll do that. So
And
anyhow,
you
we
did.
got a license for the school in 2006. It took me 4 years to get a curriculum together. I had no idea. I was honest to God, I was never a good student. I mean, I, if I was in school now, they would have probably diagnosed me with ADD and Ritalin because I came from a traumatized background as well. I had lots. I came from an Italian American family in Chicago, and no dinner ever. You never left a dinner without a fight. I mean that was just the way it was. It was just uncles were brawling and people were yelling at each other, and it was just a really unusual upbringing. So education really wasn't my forte, but we took it on. We got the school open in 2010. I said I would never do this unless I got the school accredited because I think that's why the profession never grew. Oakley Smith, ran the schools until the 70s when he died, and then other people took him over, and nobody ever accredited a school. And that's why it didn't grow. So we got the school opened. I graduated my first class in 2014. I had to do that in order to petition an accreditor to accredit us. We got petition accepted in 2016. And in 2021, we became the first naprapathic school ever to be accredited. And so we've graduated 50 naprapaths since. And I got to tell you, yesterday we reached another huge milestone because we are now the first naprapathic school to be accredited to now have financial student aid for students. So we got our contract yesterday from the federal government, and this changes the world because, you know, my mission now is to see healthcare change. I want to see, put health back in healthcare or put health in healthcare. It's never really been there. It's disease care. We manage diseases, we don't treat health. And you can go and do that. You can go get scripts and you can go get surgery, or you can really go down the pathway to start managing your health. And our programs, the Doctor of Naprapathic Medicine, and then the Master of Science in Anti-Inflammatory Nutrition are the two programs that we offer here, really help people to not only change other people's lives, but their own lives, right? You have an opportunity to come in and take on this lifestyle. I've been a naprapath for 40 years. Okay. I graduated naprapath school in 1983. I was 33 years old at the time. But really, I've been a naprapath all my life because my uncle was a naprapath. And the only sane man in my childhood who everybody else thought was nuts, okay? Because he was into health back in the 50s. He was talking health. And if I was sick, I wanted to go see my uncle and get a treatment. And he'd give me a treatment, he'd give me some herbs, and he'd give me some recommendations. And that was my life. I was blessed to be able to do that. I'm 70 years old. Okay. I've never been on a prescription medication in my life. I don't ever plan on taking a prescription. Yeah, I've been sick, sure, but I've always treated it with food. If I was sick, I eliminated what was making me sick and I enhanced my body to deal with what was making me sick. I just didn't take something to cover it up, and that's the type of medicine that we want to bring forward. The number 2 and 3 reason people go to medical doctors, you know what it is, Paulina? It's back pain and joint
Right.
pain. Okay.
I
So
believe
the
it.
number 2 and 3 reason, and we have these medical doctors, we have a shortage of medical doctors, right? And
Mhm.
why in the world are people going to medical doctors who will only give them drugs or physical therapy, which both treat symptoms, to deal with that? Naprapaths, manual therapists should be primary care as far as neuromusculoskeletal pain. And if they should be referred to people like us. And then if we don't see something that we can help with, then they go to the medical doctor. We free up medical doctors' appointment list, and they're never going to get addicted to opioids if they come and see us. We've lost 1 million people since the pandemic to opioids, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, talk about, a breach in care to the American population or to the population of the world. It's, it's just time for the change, and we're positioned to do it.
I keep saying that we are in a time where we are the most informed we've ever been. We have the most resources available at our fingertips than we've ever had in our lives. We have a generation of kids and people who have all been diagnosed with something. And really, nobody is getting down to the root of
Yeah.
things. It really is what it comes down to. I feel like we talk about labels, we talk about, you talk about ADHD, we talk about PTSD, we talk about trauma. And a lot of these things I think have become buzzwords for people, but there are still people who suffer from all of this, and we're just not treating it the way we should be treating it at the root of its problems.
There are people who are treating it at the root of it, Paulina. You know that. I mean, they're there, but they're
They're there,
very
but they're
they're
far and few in
undercover. It is
between.
not mainstream. It is our job, okay, my mission to bring this mainstream. We're going to do it by validating the science of manual therapy because if you don't come to medicine with science, okay, they're going to just poo-poo this. It's just the way it is, and you can't circumvent that. So you've got to join it. You've got to be able to go in. I have a 16-year-old son, okay, and I tell my son, I said, buddy, he doesn't like rules. What a shock, right? A 16-year-old who doesn't like rules.
I'm 33. I don't like them either.
So it's like, Jackson, you have got to learn to follow the rules. And then if you want to change them, you've gone through the process of seeing what those things are that you had to follow, then you can make a change, you grow up in a system that is the way it is. You don't buck it by, you know, rebelling against it. You buck it by getting in it, doing it and changing it, and that's what healthcare has got to be right now. And I think that the millennials, are they're going to be the group that really helps carry this because your group understands how important health is. They're seekers of health, they're seekers of fitness, they're seekers. Um, and you've got to build that momentum. And I think I told you this before. I'm a big fan of Shark Tank, right? I love Shark Tank. I love,
Yes.
right? And people always go on Shark Tank and they're going to they're going to donate proceeds to this, which is all wonderful. Everybody's got a social issue that they want to support, right? Well, what about if we took on a diet that healed
Mhm.
ourselves, that healed the soils? Okay, we got to buy from the farmers and the ranchers that are tending to these soils. They're tending to these soils to regenerate them, restore them. They'll capture carbon. They will help with global warming. And if we can eat and put people into business that are restoring and tending soils and really taking it serious and living our lifestyles like that, we build an entire, you know, meta universe on that, and we can heal ourselves, heal the planet, and companies are out there positioned for that. You see regenerative farming all the time. You see restorative foods. You see, farm, products that are, touting that. It's 2024. You can go in any grocery store in the United States and find organically grown produce, organically grown, made products on the shelves. I mean, when I started this 40 years ago, not so much, man. I was living in Chicago in the frozen tundra. There was one health food store that was like 20 miles away from where I was living. It just wasn't the way it is, but it's there now. People understand it. This lifestyle is positioned to really take over.
You had mentioned millennials being the ones who are making change. I just had a conversation with my mom last night, and she kind of she was saying the exact opposite. She's like, "Oh, this generation, your generation is so terrible. They don't want to get married. They don't want to do all these things." And I said, "Actually, mom, what we don't want to do is we don't want to be making the same mistakes that we saw our parents make. So we are actively trying to say, no, we're not doing this. Let me not take your advice for a
Yeah,
moment. Let me learn from
yeah,
myself and let me make a
yeah,
change." And I see that with myself. I see it with my brother, my sister in law. We are the generation that definitely wants to push back and say, what was working for you is no longer working for us. And we've seen that.
yeah.
Now, the other thing I wanted to say is we talk about organic food and we talk about great nutrition. Dr. Nuzzo, one of the things that I know that I have been seeing a lot of online as well recently is a lot of articles really going at the organic market as well because it's not as organic. So let's talk about food and where food comes from and kind of what actual regenerative food is.
The best way to source food, obviously, is local and near
Yeah.
you, and what's in season, right? So going to the farmers markets and, knowing who your growers are, but, also these big commercial growers, okay? Going into the big grocery stores like the Whole Foods or your big the Kroger chains, if they're organic, they're organic. These companies can't mess with hiding, non-organic products out there. I think that you're going to run into some things online that are probably skirting the issue, some smaller players. But I would really just try to find your sources locally, right? We're coming into April now. I mean, farmers markets are going to be popping up all over the place right now. So, eat what's in season, eat what's local. Make a relationship with a butcher or a grocery store or a ranch that's providing the meat, that's providing the chicken, that's providing your protein sources. So you've got to put some time and energy into this. So yeah, there's always fraudsters out there, Paulina. It's just the way it is. But you got to be able to find your way around that. And
Right.
you know find the people, because you'll know when people are into their craft because of the passion that they talk about with their food. Like, I go into the farmers markets and I love talking to the ranchers and the farmers, and that they're into it, man. They're dirty, their hands are dirty, they're just talking it, they're living it. So I there's something that I want to share, and I share this one all the time. There's a great documentary called Kiss the Ground, and Woody Harrelson narrates it, and it's about two farmers, that go around the country talking to other farmers about restorative and regenerative farming, and how amazingly important it is, and how much it can do to bring global warming, into, not we're not going to solve it, but it's going to be a big solution. It's a big way. I mean, if we got millions and millions and millions of people supporting these restorative, regenerative farmers, it's a movement that we can make happen. And it's going to make huge differences out there. So I would urge you to go. Netflix's Kiss the Ground. Woody Harrelson. Plug for you,
I'll have to
buddy.
go check it out. Dr. Nuzzo, so let's get you. So we're kind of we've taken you around the country
All
here.
right.
We started in Illinois,
Yep.
we've taken you to New
Right.
Mexico, but me and you met in Las
How about
Vegas. So how did we get here?
that? Last year, I decided, my vision is to bring naprapathy forward, right? That's my mission. We've got an accredited school now. Now we got financial aid. So we're really going to move this thing forward. And I was thinking about, I want to do another state. And I was looking at Florida, I was looking at Arizona, and I was looking at Nevada. And I try to tell myself, I've kicked open enough doors to know I had to stop doing that, right? So I start looking for low hanging fruit and where is the best spot for me to come into, and where's the least amount of resistance. Well, it turned out to be Nevada was really that opportunity for me, and we uh, introduced a bill into the Nevada legislature in January 2023. We introduced the Naprapathic Practice Act, making it possible for naprapaths to practice in the state. And the bill was we moved through the entire legislature in one session and got the governor to sign that bill into law because I talked to the legislatures about everything I talked to you guys about especially about the shortage of medical doctors. You guys have a shortage of medical doctors, but you're letting your medical doctors treat your people who have neuromusculoskeletal pain with opioids and therapies that don't work. We've got to change this. So healthcare is so important, and
Right.
I was able to educate the legislatures on the treatments. I was able to give some experimental treatments and let people understand what it was, and we got huge support. We are working on opening our school in Henderson, Nevada. Fortunate enough to run into a wonderful group that runs a school already in Henderson, Nevada, the Roseman University of College of Nursing, Physical Therapy, and Dentistry. And our school is running within their campus. Hopefully, by the end of this year, by fall to the end of this year, we'll start our first class out of Nevada and start graduating naprapaths and start offering Master of Science in Anti-Inflammatory Nutrition, which is 100% online, by the way. So people can
Right.
engage in this process, work it towards getting themselves healthy, and if they have a client base or a family, I mean, it's just a wonderful way of working. But my big vision for this thing is um, I want to see this go national, right? And the way we're going to do that is we're going to target a small sector of healthcare, which is a huge sector of healthcare, and we're going to target the veterans. Okay, we're going to target veterans healthcare and veterans coming in to get educated. I want veterans to heal veterans. So we will, now that we have financial aid, the VA will also pay for veterans to come to our school. They'll come through the program, they'll get educated about naprapathic medicine, they'll be able to be doctors of naprapathic medicine, learning manual therapy, and they'll go back into the VA system because we're only licensed in 3 states, okay? So if
Right.
somebody comes through our program and gets licensed in one of those 3 states, they can go into any VA facility in the United States with that license and practice. So we can have a nationwide network of naprapaths through the VA system who are veterans and non-veterans, but who are veterans who can treat other veterans for their neuromusculoskeletal pain and stress. And we'll also offer the anti-inflammatory master's degree because just the end of 2023, a huge study came out through the VA on lifestyle and diet and nutrition and exercise and how amazingly well it impacts those veterans. And our masters of science in anti-inflammatory nutrition is that lifestyle that they talked about in this study. So we can get lifestyle coaches from the VA who can go through the program and then go back out and teach other veterans how to eat, what to do, treat the cause, not the symptoms. So we can
Right.
take a small huge portion of healthcare and show cost benefit analysis and show how treating the cause and not the symptoms really saves money and saves lives, by the way. Let's put health in healthcare. I mean, it's the healthcare system is disease care.
Yeah.
All we're doing is just prolonging the inevitable. I mean, we're all gonna none of us are gonna get out of this alive, Paulina. But there's a quality of life that we have.
Man, thank you for that
Well,
one.
it's the truth. But you could be 70 years old and vibrant and, running around like a kid, or, I could push you around in your wheelchair. I mean, it's just the way it is. And It's that important. And more and more and more and more studies are proving what we're saying. And the studies in medicine are what rule, and that's okay. We got them. We're going to keep on producing them. So that's where it's going.
Thanks for watching, and that's okay. Join us next week on Wednesday for another episode. In the meantime, subscribe below, like, comment, and share, or find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Until next week.